Hey, what's a reading?
Whoa!
What's a
Now
reading?
that's an optical illusion.
Tevin.
Oh, hi.
Tevin.
Do you mind I'm reading?
What's a reading?
Well, actually, I'm not really reading. I'm just looking at this book. This book, 3D Wonderland by Tokuma Shoten, is a book of 3D optical illusions where you can look at a flat image on a page that looks like distorted colors and tiles. You cross your eyes and slowly move the book forward and backward. It creates a 3D optical illusion with your eyes. Yeah, it's a pretty cool picture book of illusions. And in today's video, we're going to check out everything included in this book, a little bit of information about how the book works and what the book is like itself, the reasons why I picked up this book in the first place, and anything else I can think of about the book 3D Wonderland by Tokuma Shoten. Let's jump in on today's Happy Beard Games.
Okay, bye!
Happy Beard Games, your source for classic gaming goodness.
Taking a look, it's in a book. And in this book, it's not actually related to video games too much. So that's a little weird for my channel, to do something not related to video games. But we've done book reviews in the past, and this one is slightly related to video games. It's more about art, illusion, 3D imagery type things, auto-stereoscopic 3D, and computer imagery, computer graphics, and other things as well that are also related to things like Pixar and the early days of computer graphics. Now, the reason I picked up this book in the first place is kind of a funny story. I was walking to my local half-price books, just browsing through. They have a section about games, such as like classic board games, and then below it they have video game strategy guides. Up on the top shelf, this struck my eye. Just the font on the side, and the small white font of Tokuma Shoten. I'm sitting there like looking at the side of this book, and I'm like, Tokuma Shoten, what is that? Why does that sound familiar? And then I remembered this game, Labyrinth. And on this game, Jim Henson's Labyrinth for the Famicom is published by someone called Tokuma Soft. And I knew from a review and other information that I knew about the game Labyrinth and a couple other video games that the actual company is Tokuma Shoten. So then I was like, okay, well that's kind of interesting. So I pulled the book off the shelf and I looked at the cover art and I was like, oh my goodness, what am I getting myself into? Look at this cover art. It's crazy. A whole bunch of UFOs and CG dinosaurs rendered in like a 90s style poor CG quality. I mean, by today's standard, it's poor CG, but it also could be intentional. But it looks like something out of the History Channel at midnight. You know, you got your pyramids, you got your UFOs and dinosaurs in a 3D Wonderland. I love the title of this book. It's just 3D Wonderland. Like, and that's what you're gonna find inside this book too. It's not like false advertising. It's literally just a 3D Wonderland inside this book. It's a little small. I kind of wish I had more stuff, more content, but it's a pretty awesome book. And it's kind of weird because it's just 3D Wonderland. You're like, okay, well, is it just gonna be images of dinosaurs rendered in 90s tech? Or is it going to be something even more exciting like an actual Wonderland? And yes, it is. So in today's video, we're jumping in with 3D Wonderland by Tokuma Shoten. And real briefly, a little history on Tokuma Shoten. It's a Japanese publisher that published manga, anime movies, some music, some magazines, and some books, including this one. A majority of their work is from Japan, where they're located, but this book managed to make it to the United States. It has the actual, like, I guess UPC for United States and Canada on the back. So it did make it overseas. And then Tokuma Shoten has published video games such as Labyrinth on the Famicom. A lot of the games are older games throughout the 90s. They did some great anime movies that they published, and you can look all that up online. But for the book, we're looking at this book right now. Now, it's got one of those, like, slip covers, and underneath it's just like a slightly different colored version of the actual cover. Now, there is two parts to this book. There is part one, the first half, called The Evolving Stereogram. Whoa, stereogram, nice. And then part 2, the multiplying stereograms. Whoa, we start from evolving to multiplying. There's also a sub-column called naked eye 3-dimensional viewing, which I guess is the term for the technique used to actually view these images in 3D. So to explain naked eye 3D viewing, as they call it in the book, you basically have to cross your eyes and then keep it that way for a little bit while kind of going really close to your face to the page and then pulling out slowly. You might have to try it a couple times to get it right, and I'm not sure if it works for every person on the planet, but it seems like it does work after a little while for me. Sometimes I can't get an image to work at all, and then I'll come back a day later or next time I open the book, and it'll just work right away. So some images work, some are a little more complex. Maybe that's harder on the eyes or harder on the brain to try to get into that 3D display. But it's all just a flat image, like these ones, on the page that has been created using computer graphics to make an image that when you cross your eyes and you look at it the right way, it will pop out of the page. Now, personally, I've never seen a book like this before. I've seen images just on the wall or a poster or a brief image in a magazine where you can trick your eyes to see a 3D image pop out. So I've had some experience with this before, even since I was a little kid, but I've never had an actual book that's directly about this kind of stuff. That's naked eye 3-dimensional viewing, as they call it. And these stereograms they start off simple and they get more complex, and they even try to incorporate a game with it, because there's one where it's 2 sumo wrestlers, and if you cross your eyes and you can see which one is actually losing the match first. Well, only if you do the cross your eye thing. So with this book, it not only shows you a gradual increase in difficulty of these stereograms, it also talks about some 3D imagery, and it also talks about how to get your eyes to work with it, and it also talks about some other tips and tricks and some other information about 3D graphics. And in this book, they don't really go too much detail about why there's a page about morphing. They just have a page about morphing for some reason. It's not an eye trick thing. It doesn't pop out 3D or anything like that. But they have a man transforming or morphing into a woman, and then they have that woman morphing into a cat, which is kind of terrifying. Reminds me of Animorphs. And then they also have, which is really creepy, they have a man, the same man, and he's morphing into a skeleton. But it's a poorly rendered, early 90s CG skeleton. Why did they not just use a real skeleton? I don't know, because they used a real cat. I don't know, but it's pretty terrifying. And to specifically quote the book, morphing is a function of software that blends 2 different pictures from one to another. These pictures do not actually come out in 3D, but by using 3D viewing techniques, you get quite an interesting effect. For a majority of the book, it's just evolving stereograms. Stereograms that start out simplistic, like a bunch of stars on a page or a bunch of lines on a page, that you can cross your eyes and zoom in and out to create an image, an optical illusion, if you will, that is a 3D image that pops out of the page, and you can see it with your eyes for a brief moment. You can even kind of tilt the book or tilt your head and eyes to, while not losing focus, and then you can see the image kind of move around in that 3D space, which is really cool, but it only lasts for a few seconds. As the book unfolds, you've got more complex images to look through. And I haven't looked through all of them. I've done a few of them. This one right here is a double helix, where it has that double helix spiral that pops out of this image. Then we get to the page with more complex imagery, which is actual 3D characters, and then when you cross your eyes, something happens. Same way as the other ones, but instead of using just patterns of tiles or lines, this uses actual imagery of knives or pigs. And then as the book continues, they talk about stereo photographs. So these are actual photographs of a cityscape that you can see in a stereo 3D setting with your eyes. It's a lot like the Nintendo 3DS, how you can take that slider on the side of the 3DS and kind of turn a 2D image and activate the 3D mode, or even when you're watching a video on YouTube on your 3DS, if it has the 3D mode enabled, you could use that. So it's more like the videos on the 3DS. When you're doing this, it's an on and off switch, but you have to do it with your actual eyes by crossing them and then looking close and going back and forth to the page. It's more like that. It's not like the 3DS where you can really like finely tune it without having to do any straining or any real thought processing. With these, it's a little bit, at least for me, it's like an on and off switch. Like it'll be on, I'll be trying to get it on, and then the 3D effect will pop in, and then for only like maybe like 5 seconds will it last, unless I like don't look away from the page. So it's a real brief, real temporary experience. But these 3D naked image eye puzzles, whatever you want to call them, they are fun to do. And it's interesting that you can do this with your eyes. You can trick your eyes to see something that's flat in a three-dimensional space. There's a little guide. I don't know why this is halfway through the book, but there's a guide on three-dimensional viewing halfway through the book. I feel like this should have been at the very start, because it's like you jump in, you're like, what do I do? On this page, they give you the key to three-dimensional viewing with the naked eye. So I was doing the cross-eye style, and that's what works for me best. There's also a parallel style where you can basically you take a deep breath, relax your eyes, you pick a distant object, focusing your eyes on it, slowly bring the 3D picture into sight, but continue focusing on that object in the distance. It may take several minutes if you're trying it for the first time. And then there's 2 dots on the top of the pages that'll help you focus on the 3D image in the book rather than what's in the background. But you want to focus on something way in the distance. And this didn't work for me, so I don't use this method. I use the cross-eye method. It's just easier for me to do. But I can understand how the cross-eye method would feel uncomfortable and hard to do for people that don't know how to cross their eyes, or if they have, like, I don't know, some other problem that might stop them from wanting to cross their eyes. You don't want to do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, and I don't know if this can actually make you like nauseous or give you a headache or anything like that, but I know the Nintendo 3DS, when I first started using the 3D effect on that a long time ago, that made me nauseous, especially with some of the fast motion and with the really high depth at full. There's also a page about information on 3D and working with the eyes, which gives you an interview with Dr. Nobue Kubota, professor of optometry at Tokyo University in Tokyo, Japan. Then we reach part 2 of the book, halfway through, and that is multiplying stereograms, where you got multiple things going on the sequence at once. Now this part of the book was harder on my eyes and harder for me to pull off any of the 3D effects, so I think I might need a little bit of practice with this book, or at least sit down with it for a good half an hour and focus on the earlier ones first before I get to the harder ones, because it's not so much like it strains my eyes more, it's more like it was just harder for me to even see the image in that three-dimensional space. There's some pretty cool artwork in this. Even if it's not 3D, it still looks pretty cool. There it is, the dinosaur from the front cover. Kind of. It's a little bit different. Maybe it's the same model, but it's a different picture. I like this one with the squirrels. The book doesn't have a real conclusion, but it does get gradually more difficult as the book unfolds throughout the book, and then it's scattered with pieces of information of how to use 3D. Places like support groups or discussion boards or whatever, you can find other people to talk to this about, people that actually research it and create this stuff. It talks a little bit about 3D imagery, how it was created. There's an interview with a doctor saying, like, is this something with my vision that I can't see 3D, stuff like that. So in this book, there is no real ending. There's no ending page. It just ends with like pictures and then credits. Alright everybody, that's it for today's Happy Beard Games. We checked out not a game, but a book by a publisher that published some games, Tokuma Shoten, or Tokuma Soft, and that book is 3D Wonderland. It truly is a wonderland of 3D stereoscopic stereo imagery. These are all created mostly with computer technology from the 90s, so it has that kind of style that the front cover shows. But it's not all like that. Some of them are photographs that are stereoscopic and other things like that we showed throughout the book. There's some cool guides on how to use it, some interviews with doctors about it, some resources you can look up for more information later on about 3D imagery like that. And most of all, the most important thing about this book is not only is it informational, it's a lot of fun to look at, like more fun than I expected. It's fun to look at the same images even more than once. It's a good collection of nice looking artwork as well as nice looking 3D effects. And 3D Wonderland is just a good one. If you ever find this book at a library or a bookstore, I'd highly recommend picking it up just to see for yourself what this 3D looks like, because you probably can't get it through the YouTube page. And actually, I wouldn't recommend looking this up on your computer screen and trying to do this. I mean, it might work, but you also might hurt your eyes, so I'm not sure about that. Anyways, that's about it for today's video on Happy Beard Games. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a like, leave me a comment, share it with your friends, subscribe today for more classic gaming goodness. You can support me by donating on my Ko-fi page. All the links to my channel and other channels will be in the description box below. Alright everybody, thanks for watching once again. Bye!